February 10th, 2008, 10:45 p.m. The night was cold, the wind relentless across a small airfield just outside Dallas, Texas. Even though the clock was inching toward midnight, Captain Samantha McAllister refused to leave the cockpit of the Gulfstream G450 she was scheduled to fly the next morning. She had a distant look in her eyes, as though haunted by something far beyond the runway lights. Sam's co-pilot, Kevin Marshall, stood nearby, sipping coffee from a foam cup. He'd never seen his captain this distracted. "Sam, are you okay?" he asked, his tone carefully measured. He knew Sam's reputation for fierce independence. She was the youngest female pilot in the private aviation company, brilliant, fearless, yet undeniably secretive. Sam nodded but said nothing. The drone of a passing jet overhead filled the silence between them. From a distance, a lone flight mechanic waved goodnight, leaving the two pilots alone on the tarmac. Earlier that day, Kevin had caught only snippets of a heated argument between Sam and someone on the phone. He didn't recognize the voice on her end, but the conversation was peppered with references to the Sheikh, promises, and an ominous payback that Sam insisted had to be exacted soon. Kevin dismissed it as a personal matter. After all, Sam was known to have connections in high places. She once flew Middle Eastern royalty across the globe. But now, something was off. Her eyes were red-rimmed and her fingers trembled as they skimmed the flight manual. Kevin glimpsed an expression on her face, one that looked more like raw panic than mere stress. "Do you believe people can just walk away from their pasts?" Sam suddenly asked, her voice low. She didn't look up. Her question hung in the night air, surprising Kevin with its intensity. "I guess it depends on what they're walking away from," he replied. The hush of the deserted airfield seemed to amplify each spoken word. Kevin's gaze drifted to the silver wings pinned to Sam's jacket. She'd worked so hard to earn them, yet there was a heaviness in the way she wore her uniform now. Sam exhaled sharply, almost like a laugh but laced with bitterness. Some things you can't run from. They'll chase you down. And then you got to decide if you'll fight back." Her cryptic response sent a chill down Kevin's spine, and he found himself at a loss. Instinctively, he reached for her shoulder, but she shrugged him off. He noticed then just how frail she felt beneath the layers of her uniform. Seconds later, Sam's cell phone rang. The neon screen lit up the darkness, displaying an unlisted international number. She quickly silenced it, but not before Kevin glimpsed the initials that flashed. DCC. Something about those letters made his heart race. Could it mean Dubai Sheikh? Kevin had heard rumors about Sam's past flights. Rumors that she'd gotten entangled in a scandal overseas. Sam read it and her features hardened. Whatever the message contained, it rattled her. She jammed the phone back in her pocket, then met Kevin's concerned stare. "It's time," she said, her voice eerily steady. "Let's get some rest. Tomorrow is going to be eventful." Little did Kevin know that night would mark the beginning of a sinister unraveling, one that would put lives, careers, and perhaps even his own sanity on the line. The story truly began 3 years prior in the sumptuous first-class lounge of a New York airport. Captain Samantha McAllister had been called in for an exclusive charter flight to Los Angeles with a Middle Eastern dignitary. Upon arrival, she discovered that this VIP was none other than Sheikh Amir al-Rashid, a billionaire from Dubai, known for his extravagant lifestyle. Sam was on top of her game then, confident, unyielding, and proud to be among the elite ranks of female pilots in private aviation. The Sheikh, flamboyant and charming, wasted no time laying on the flattery. He insisted that only Sam was to pilot his jet whenever he traveled within the United States. He praised her skill, her composure, and her groundbreaking position as a woman in a male-dominated field. In the beginning, Sam wasn't smitten by the Sheikh. She was impressed by his global influence. Flying him from coast to coast gave her a taste of a glamorous lifestyle, 5-star hotels, exclusive clubs, diamond-studded gifts. With each flight, the Sheikh loosened the boundary between professional courtesy and personal intimacy. One evening, after a dinner in a private New York penthouse, he made his intentions clear. Sam had her own ambitions. She dreamed of owning a charter fleet, forging partnerships across continents. The Sheikh seemed to offer a shortcut to everything she yearned for: wealth, prestige, and power. Slowly, their relationship shifted from pilot and passenger to secret lovers. For a time, Sam reveled in the high life, her every whim catered to, her bank account swelling from mysterious bonuses. But hidden beneath the opulence lurked a darker side. Rumors floated among flight crews that the Sheikh had enemies and engaged in questionable business deals. Sam discovered cryptic documents in his luggage, foreign bank statements, references to shell companies. She tried to ignore these warning signs, focusing on the allure of their passionate affair and the life-changing opportunities it provided her. Around the same time, Sam's friendship with Kevin Marshall began. They'd been paired on a few domestic routes for a different VIP client. Kevin admired Sam's fierce talent and respected her boundaries. Over time, they developed a camaraderie, joking about annoying passengers and sharing the occasional drink on layovers. When Sam started receiving late-night phone calls from the Sheikh, Kevin noticed the changes in her mood swings, secretiveness, a flicker of fear in her eyes she tried to hide. Then came the turning point, a private flight from Las Vegas to Miami. Midway through the journey, the Sheikh unexpectedly summoned Sam to the cabin. She found him pacing, a scowl on his face. He confronted her about an investor who had pulled out of a major deal, demanding that Sam use her connections to rectify the situation. When she hesitated, he erupted in anger. Threats were made. Sam felt cornered. It was the first time she saw the Sheikh as a man accustomed to getting his way, by any means necessary. That night, after landing in Miami, Sam locked herself in a luxury suite. The Sheikh pounded on her door. She refused him entry, sobbing in silence, realizing she'd entangled herself in a web of wealth, power, and intimidation. The affair hadn't just been about passion or ambition. She was now bound to a dangerous man. In the days that followed, Sam resolved to break it off, but the Sheikh wouldn't let her go so easily. Frantic, she filed paperwork to be transferred back to domestic routes, hoping distance would break the spell. Little did she know her troubles were only beginning. Secrets have a way of crossing oceans, and vengeance doesn't require a visa stamp. By the time Sam returned to the USA full-time, her reputation as a top-tier pilot remained intact, but she was a shadow of her former self. She'd stay late at the hangar, checking and rechecking flight logs, sometimes muttering about loose ends. Kevin, who often found himself assigned to Sam's flights, sensed her deterioration. Something was gnawing at her, day by day, night by night. Though Kevin didn't know the full extent of Sam's entanglement with Sheikh, he could see the fear behind her bravado. When she wasn't piloting, Sam spent hours on the phone with unknown contacts, sometimes arguing in hushed tones about deadlines and demands. At times, Kevin caught glimpses of desperation, tremors in her hands as she gripped her coffee cup, dark circles under her eyes that no amount of makeup could hide. Everything changed when Sam received a certified letter from an overseas address. Kevin saw her read it in the flight lounge, her face turning white. She crumpled the paper, stormed to the bathroom, and emerged 15 minutes later with tears staining her cheeks. After that day, Sam grew eerily focused. She made phone calls to doctors, arranged private consultations in obscure clinics. Kevin tried to ask what was going on, but she brushed him off with vague mentions of health concerns and routine checkups. Weeks passed. The new year, 2008, arrived with little fanfare. The only sign of celebration was a single confetti streamer left behind in the staff cafeteria. Sam declined any holiday gatherings, using extra flight shifts as an excuse to isolate herself. Meanwhile, Kevin began to suspect that Sam might be in serious trouble. Her behavior hinted at blackmail or extortion. He overheard her refer to a disease on multiple occasions, though he couldn't connect the dots just yet. Then, on a routine flight to Chicago, Sam nearly lost her composure mid-flight. She was sweating profusely, shaking so badly that Kevin insisted she rest while he took control. When they landed, Sam vanished. Later that evening, Kevin found her slumped in a corner of the airport lounge, eyes bloodshot. She finally blurted out a piece of her secret. I tested positive. They said it's HIV. Her voice cracked as she tried to maintain her composure. Kevin was at a loss for words. He placed a comforting hand on her shoulder, but Sam recoiled. "Don't!" she warned, her tone bitter and defensive. She refused to say how or when she'd contracted it, but Kevin's mind immediately went to the rumors of her affair with the Sheikh. Could it be linked to him? From that moment on, Sam's spiral accelerated. She began speaking cryptically about making things right. Kevin tried to reassure her that treatments had advanced, that it wasn't a death sentence, but Sam brushed him off, fixated on a single thought. Someone had betrayed her. And she once whispered, "He gave me this. He lied to me. Now he's threatening to ruin everything." Kevin couldn't pry more details out of her, but the name of the Sheikh surfaced again and again, like a sinister specter haunting every conversation. Sam blamed him for her illness, for her looming financial ruin, for her shattered dreams. What truly frightened Kevin, however, was the glint in her eyes whenever she mentioned payback. He didn't know if she meant to go after the Sheikh directly, or if her anger would manifest in another, more twisted way. In the hush of airport terminals and the solitude of late-night flights, Sam's desperation festered, forging a dangerous resolve that neither Kevin nor anyone else could fully comprehend. By the time February rolled around, Sam appeared a woman on the brink, clutching her pilot's wings with one hand and her vengeance with the other. The tension reached a boiling point on a crisp morning in early February 2008, just days before the fateful night Kevin would never forget. The two pilots had been assigned a short domestic flight from Dallas to Denver. Sam arrived at the cockpit unnervingly calm, as though she'd made peace with a dreadful decision. Mid-flight, Kevin couldn't help but notice Sam's obsessive glances toward him. At one point, she removed a small vial from her flight bag, rolling it between her fingers. When Kevin asked about it, she slid it back into her pocket and mumbled something about vitamins. But the look in her eyes was anything but reassuring. Upon landing in Denver, Sam insisted they grab lunch together. Over a half-eaten salad, Sam leaned forward, whispering details that sent chills through Kevin. "He threatened my family. He told me if I cut him off, he'd make sure no airline would hire me again. And I'd already tested positive by then. He told me I was damaged goods." Kevin listened in stunned silence. Sam's voice trembled with a mix of hatred and despair. The Sheikh had apparently not only given her the virus, but he'd also blackmailed her with it, ensuring her loyalty by wielding her medical status like a weapon. "I thought I could walk away," she murmured. After lunch, they parted ways briefly. Kevin went to check on flight logistics. Sam vanished into a pharmacy near the concourse. When they regrouped an hour later, her eyes were bloodshot, her hands fidgeting in her pockets. An uneasy suspicion crept over Kevin. He'd heard horror stories of scorned individuals using their HIV status as a twisted tool of revenge. He prayed Sam wasn't planning anything so dark. But back in Dallas that evening, Kevin's worst fears found roots. An airline supervisor, Mark Chambers, approached him discreetly. Chambers mentioned an anonymous tip about Sam's physical and mental condition, claiming she might be a danger to fellow crew members. Kevin tried to defend her, but Chambers' expression remained grim. "Just keep your eyes open. She's not stable," he warned. Alarmed, Kevin confronted Sam in the pilot's lounge. He demanded answers about her condition, her intentions. Sam snapped. She hurled accusations at Kevin, calling him naive, accusing him of being in league with the Sheikh. "You don't know what he's capable of," she shouted, voice echoing in the sterile corridor. Other pilots turned their heads, sensing the hostility. That night, Kevin tried to call Sam repeatedly, but she never picked up. Instead, he found a note slipped under his hotel room door. "You're just like him. Lying, pretending to care. Don't try to stop me." The following day, Sam didn't show up for a pre-flight briefing. Kevin discovered she'd requested to be Kevin's co-pilot on a small charter flight to Florida, an unscheduled change. Officially, it was to fill a last-minute vacancy, but Kevin suspected Sam had maneuvered it. Something about her wanting to be alone with him in a cockpit for 3 hours unsettled him deeply. He alerted Chambers, but policy forced them to proceed with caution. They couldn't ground Sam without definitive proof she posed a safety risk. Kevin realized he'd be locked in an aircraft with a potentially unstable colleague who, fueled by rage and desperation, might do something unthinkable. As he boarded the Gulfstream the next day, dread gnawed at him. Sam was already seated, performing final checks with a detached efficiency. Her gaze flickered over him, colder than ever before. Kevin tried to calm himself, focusing on the flight plan, but every hair on his neck stood on end. Little did he know, Sam's plan was already in motion, and soon the unraveling would reach its horrifying climax. By February 10th, 2008, the events set in motion could no longer be contained. Kevin and Sam were scheduled for a private charter from Dallas to a remote airfield in northern Montana, a flight meant for a high-profile client who'd canceled last minute. Yet the flight remained on the roster, oddly unaltered. Sam insisted they take off as planned, claiming operational protocols. Kevin, suspicious but cornered by procedure, agreed. That night, the small airfield was eerily deserted. Kevin stood by the nose of the aircraft, scanning the perimeter as if expecting an ambush. A frigid wind whipped across the tarmac. Sam arrived late, uniform pressed, hair meticulously styled, but her eyes burned with a frenzied light. She gave Kevin a curt nod before slipping into the cockpit. During the pre-flight checklist, Kevin sensed her tension. She was methodical, her hands steady on the controls, but a faint tremor betrayed her nerves. Once airborne, Sam engaged the autopilot and turned to Kevin. "I need to show you something." Her voice was low, devoid of emotion. She retrieved a small zippered bag, removed a syringe, and held it up. "This is my insurance policy," she said flatly. Kevin froze, his mind reeling. A cold sweat broke out along his spine. Had Sam lured him onto this plane to threaten him with infection? Why him? Why? Sam's explanation tumbled out in a torrent of rage and desperation. The Sheikh had withheld crucial medical information, infecting her with HIV. Then he used her diagnosis to blackmail her. In Sam's twisted logic, she'd concluded that every man who dared step in her path, every enabler of the Sheikh's betrayal, deserved a share of her pain. And Kevin, in her paranoid delusion, had become a target. She believed he'd been feeding the Sheikh information, perhaps inadvertently through casual conversations. Kevin's voice trembled as he pled, "Sam, you're not thinking straight. I never betrayed you. I had no idea." But Sam refused to listen. Tears streamed down her cheeks, her face contorting with bitterness. For a moment, her resolve flickered, and Kevin seized the chance to grab the syringe. A brief struggle ensued, the plane wobbling under autopilot as the two battled in the cockpit. Kevin managed to knock the syringe to the floor. Sam let out a guttural cry and reached for it, but Kevin kicked it out of reach. Adrenaline pulsed through his veins. He shoved her back into her seat, pressed the plane's emergency frequency, and broadcast a distress call. "Mayday, mayday! Pilot incapacitation!" His voice echoed through the static. But Sam wasn't done. Wild-eyed, she lunged at Kevin. He fought to keep control of the jet, toggling off autopilot, desperately trying to stabilize their descent. With both hands on the yoke, he was vulnerable. Sam tried again to retrieve the syringe, rummaging under the seat. Kevin saw only one option. He elbowed her away, then deployed a quick maneuver, tilting the aircraft violently to throw her off balance. The Gulfstream lurched, sending Sam tumbling. She struck her head against the flight deck panel, blood trickling down her temple. Panting, Kevin called air traffic control, begging for an emergency landing clearance. Moments later, the plane touched down, rough but intact, at a small airport in Montana, emergency vehicles already on standby. Sam was taken into custody, delirious and bleeding. Paramedics stabilized Kevin, who was shaking uncontrollably from the ordeal. Days later, investigators uncovered Sam's elaborate plan in her apartment. Diaries detailing the Sheikh's betrayal, medical documents confirming her HIV status, and disturbing notes about making men pay. In the aftermath, Sam faced charges of attempted assault with a deadly weapon, among other felonies. She confessed to her revenge mission, revealing how the Sheikh's manipulation had pushed her beyond the brink. Heaven, thankfully unharmed physically, was left to grapple with emotional scars. The Dubai Sheikh, far beyond American jurisdiction, denied all allegations, citing a jilted lover's fantasies through his high priest lawyers. For the aviation community, it was a cautionary tale of ambition, betrayal, and unchecked rage. The story spread through hangars and terminals across the country, a chilling reminder that no cockpit is immune to the darkness lurking in human hearts. In the end, the date February 10th, 2008 would forever be etched in Kevin's memory. The night a brilliant female pilot, driven by fury and betrayal, nearly used the silent weapon of disease for a horrifying revenge, and where a single slip of fate kept the flight from becoming a blood-chilling tragedy.